I'm what you call an LA native. I was born and raised in this Highland Park area. My parents are from Mexico, but yet this is where I was raised. And growing up, I grew up as you could say, typical Catholic, Latino Catholic, that is. We went to church occasionally, but for the most part, it was for sure 2 times a year, right? It was Easter and Christmas. If we didn't ever attend those 2 days, it was like a mortal sin or something. So those days were pretty important for us. But growing up, I didn't really have a context, a religious context. I didn't have an awareness of the biblical stories. I didn't have this heritage, if you will, that some people have. I pretty much had a blank slate as far as my experience with God is concerned, I should say. But I came to know the Lord back in April of 1993. I remember April vividly because it was a moment that God was able to show me through His creation that He was real, that He was so interested in knowing me. And I remember the event because it was kind of a cool day. It was brisk morning. I remember walking around the school that I attended, the high school, which is called Civic Christian High School. And it was one of those days where you're just kind of walking and you can even see your breath materialize because it was kind of cool. But it was up in a hill, the school was, and it overlooked San Gabriel Mountains. And I remember on that particular April morning, it had rained, I guess, the night previous to that, so the mountains were just covered in snow. It was just beautiful. It was really beautiful. And then there was a lot of dew in the grass, and when you kept walking around, you would see the spider webs, and they had like these little water beads hanging on. It was just a beautiful moment. And some weeks prior to that, at school, someone had given an invitation to accept Jesus Christ as a Savior. In other words, they were preaching that I was a sinner and that apart from what God has done, what Jesus Christ has done for me, that I'd pretty much be condemned to hell. And so I felt the conviction. I felt like, yeah, I know I'm not perfect because I was always in trouble in school. I'd always be at the principal's office for the first couple of years in my high school. But yet that message resonated within me. I felt like a little tug in the heart where it said, I'm not perfect. Yeah, I believe that there's a hell because in my Catholic tradition there was at least that idea of hell and heaven. But I didn't want to accept it for just a number of reasons. I had reservations to just give my life over to God. During that time, there was a Bible study going on in our class. We got to learn the Bible. We read it, we studied it, which was brand new to me. It was like a foreign language to me. I didn't even know what Matthew or Genesis was. I didn't know anything about the Bible when I started attending the school there. But there was a certain story that really popped out. The story of Abraham. He had a son. The guy's very old and he has a son. His name's Isaac. And God is basically asking Abraham to sacrifice his son so that Abraham can show his devotion to God. At least that's how I understood it back then. It's not that simple, but nevertheless, I, for some reason, had the idea that if I were to become a Christian, God would be testing me. He'd take the woman that I love very much, my mother, and He would take her from me. And I just was like, no, I'm not having that. But yet, as the weeks moved on, God worked in my heart. People were praying in the background for me. My principal, who I'd become tight with because I was always in his office, he was praying for me on his knees all the time. And lo and behold, on that brisk April morning, walking on campus, God revealed Himself to me. It was a wonderful experience. I felt liberated, and I knew at that moment that there was no turning back. God had saved me. One thing that I really appreciate about the events that transpired after that, I've gotten married, and my wife and we've been serving in Antioch, and that story continues. That awe continues forward. It hasn't stopped. And at Antioch, we get to experience the love that people have for us. that's what I really appreciate about Antioch. It's just its transparency and its just rawness. My name is Dean Fletes. This is my story. We are Antioch.